Is it on?
Hey, Uncle Mike.
That's funny.
Where are you?
So we're in the ceremony room. I mean, that's what we call it. It's a dining room in the farmhouse.
And ceremony is both craft, office, and ceremony.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to start today. I want to talk about the Starboard. I want to begin by talking about the Starboard. But also mention the fact that we're moving out of this house. You know, we're going to move out in 6 weeks. 6 strongs.
What's right over your shoulder in the mirror? When deep are roots, there is no need to fear the wind.
Yes. And so the wind is blowing us westward. And we're packing all this sort of stuff up. And there's some neat stuff. So there's
that mess over there.
That mess over there.
Storage and packing, unpacking.
But I want to start with the Starboard. There are 3 different versions of the Starboard here. The original one. And yesterday was a quarter moon, and so this is yesterday's configuration in the sky. And that was the original one. I made this. I'm so confused by time.
As you should be.
Exactly. I don't know how long ago it was. Like some of the math I do, it says it's like 7 years ago, but then other math has it like closer to 10 years. I'm not certain. And there was this Starboard here. And this is a replica of that Starboard. And got these down. Let's go show these. I can't pick that up.
Oh, the lighting is funny.
But it looks like cats, right?
Especially this part.
But it's a bird. It's a bird. Still drying out. But anyway, back to the point. Let me stay focused. So here's Starboard number 2. And then right here, this is something that you've been working on. And this is just a fabric Starboard. And
you're gonna embroider it.
I'll embroider it. Well, it'll become it will become labeled and have a little bit more character. But I mean, realistically, its purpose is evident by what's going on right now. And so that's where I want to begin this conversation, I guess. Is like the Starboard. The Starboard came into my life right before the Susquehanna mystery. But they're always related. The Starboard came in it was the fall, and then that spring, the following spring, is when I moved to the Susquehanna and all that stuff came. So they're linked. And where was I going with that? The Starboard in this, how about this? You wrote a poem. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh gosh.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
But either read that or explain what its purpose is.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so hold on. Let me just drop into context. You're talking about the Starboard.
But the Starboard and the Susquehanna mystery have always been linked.
Oh, right. I mean, this is like we're going to go deep into an expose of like the last 10 years of your life. And what I've been working on is linking, like specifically on the floor. This is the Starboard. And like I've also been working on a stagnant Starboard in embroidery. And then this is my river, like my river pile. So the Susquehanna River. Ooh, I forgot I had marker stones. So your book, Michael, and Carrying Water as a Way of Life, and The Hidden Messages in Water, with actual Susquehanna River water, the map that you drew from your flashcards, Prophecy Stone, Hummingbird, anyways. So I've been tying these two together from the beginning with I don't think you quite were aware how deeply I was tying this together, and how in getting to have an intimate view of your life and your work, I always took it for granted that the river and stars were a sacred bundle, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been just working in ceremony with myself with the river and stars to, when the yurt goes up, for us to hold river and star ceremonies. Because people of river ceremonies, we've been doing the natural astrology ceremonies. It only makes sense to me that they go hand in hand. So anyways, this is what you're referring to. And the Starboard was, you started the Starboard, like you created this before you moved to Marietta.
Correct.
When you were drawn into the Susquehanna mystery
Mm-hmm.
and all of her stories. The river is current. The river is life, force, flow, the Tao. Where will she take you? How will you surrender? What do you tow? Look, the stars above. They see you. They know. They will guide as you flow. So we just did a vending show in Bechtelsville as both our introduction to the community and our goodbye
Exit.
and our exit. And it's like we just knew there was a couple more people here we needed to connect with, which happened. But we also had our table we had the Susquehanna mystery and then the Starboard. And so we started saying to people as they walked up, you were saying like, option A or option B? You've got the river and the stars. Like, which one do you want to hear about? And no one at these like psychic fairs had it's all kind of generally crystals and jewelry and
Fluff.
this kind of Reiki, that kind of Reiki, massage. And here we have actual like river water on our table and like an ephemeris and a sky map. Like, I feel like they were the most grounded things, like the most elementally rich. And if we're going to talk, like, this is the psychic fair, so there's a total acceptance of magic. Like, we had really intense magic tools laid out on the table. And if you look around our ceremony room, like, you've been making ceremonial, like, sacred art ceremonial tools for the last 10 years as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know where you wanted to take this, but because this is your kind of manifesto as we realize who and what you are.
Well, what I wanted to do with the reading of the poem is you brought up the point of the river and stars ceremony, and that's kind of a direction where I think we're moving towards. And I liked how you, before we started filming, you read me the poem and then you showed me words, different words associated with the river and then different words associated with the stars, and then seeing it as a bundle.
Mm-hmm.
And that was meaningful to me. And maybe at the end of this video we'll circle back to that. but we'll go to where I started with the Starboard, and really the conclusion, or at least the beginning of our conclusion here in Bechtelsville. And the Starboard is where all of this, like this chapter, like this section, I wouldn't call it a chapter in my life, I would say it's like book 3. Because there's book 1 and there's book 2. Like, I had two books. Like, everyone's got 2 books. Like, this was, the Starboard began the book for me. And
Which book?
Book 3. I feel like book 4 is
Okay.
about to begin. Book 4 begins. Book 4
Okay.
begins in June. But so the Starboard's where it always kind of started, and then the Susquehanna mystery, and it was seemingly disconnected. Like, I guess, like from an outside perspective, it's like, hey, you like to talk about like mystery and like conspiracy and stuff like that. And then there's this astrology aspect, but they're linked. They've always been linked, and I don't know if it's always been so. I don't know if I've been able to always articulate that, but I've always known internally that they were connected. So we're talking about the conclusion of book 3. And
Can you say how is conspiracy and astrology related?
well, when I say conspiracy, I mean like within the Susquehanna mystery, there's a conspiratorial element.
Oh, I see.
And a lot of the content which I've created over the years is not, I would not say is traditional conspiracy theory.
Okay.
But if you're familiar with like most of the well-known, I mean, conspiracy theory is such a ridiculous word. It's alternative narratives or alternative understandings to history. That has been part of the Susquehanna. That was as much part of the Susquehanna mystery as the revelation, the revealing of its significance. So in a way, and it makes sense right now to natural astrology, because natural astrology deconstructs a lot of cultural elements of astrology, which is more or less what conspiracy theory is always about, which is like deconstructing the stories you've been indoctrinated as to, history or what have you.
So you've like worked yourself into conspiracy and out through, I'm just paying, like, words are vibration.
Mm-hmm.
You worked yourself into a lot of conspiracy theory, alternative views on history, and what came out. One of the things that came out of that was a rich synchromistic historical research about the Susquehanna River, and what was with you, guiding you all along the way from the beginning before you started doing the conspiracy work, was the Starboard behind me. The one that you made by hand.
I'd been studying conspiracy for 10 years before the Starboard.
Okay.
So I was a student
Okay.
of alternative histories.
Okay.
And then with the Starboard, I became a participant. If you could look at like what we're calling conspiracy theory as really a reframing of narratives.
Mm-hmm.
That thread of reframing narratives has been a primary thread in this tapestry I've been weaving for a long time.
And is that what then led you to astrology? Like your interest in astrology?
I've been practicing it, or at least familiar with astrology in my chart for at least 10 years before Starboard.
But you also said you were a student of conspiracy before Starboard. I'm just wondering, chicken or the egg? Like, did conspiracy...
Those were always part of me. And so they've always been, like, two different sides, I suppose.
Okay.
But, I don't... They're linked through my mind. So, in a way, they've always been connected, though maybe they've been separated from one another at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the period of time from... When I built the Starboard, I became a participant in astrology. Prior to that, I was just like some dude who like read books and like knew a little bit about my chart, and I had a couple readings. So when I made or had my chart read, and then when I made the Starboard, like something happened. I became a participant in what we would think of as astrology. Likewise, prior to the Susquehanna mystery, I'd probably spent countless hours reading alternative history and conspiracy books, but through the Susquehanna mystery, well, then I found myself right in the middle of like one of the biggest mysteries that are out there. So, and that happened not simultaneously, but one right after another. The Starboard, whatever year it was, I don't recall, maybe 2015. I built that Starboard in September, October, November. And then the following March, I moved to Marietta and immediately began the Susquehanna mystery. Like, had I not lived in Marietta, like, I wouldn't have been on the river. So, like, one did flow to the other.
When did you start making, or what was the period of time that you were making, like, right over your left shoulder is kind of close, one of the pieces of, like, sacred art and or sacred art tools?
Probably made that 2 years before I made the Starboard.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I began making collage work.
Mm-hmm.
I started making collage work. So actually, I started collage work 2010, completed that by 2013, and there was a little bit of overlap where I did collage work and then woodwork, and then I did the woodwork and then like all of the sacred tools from probably 2012 to 2015. Like that was when I was still living in the house in Lancaster. All that time, like I mean, that was when I was like knee deep in reading everything I possibly could on alternative histories, anything I could read on magic, anything I could read. I mean, this is when I went down to Peru. Like every single type of influence, like ingredient which I could add into to my mental crock pot. Like I just put it in, and then it's just like it's slow cooked. It's slow cooked, like
over
like,
a period of 10 years.
For a period of 10 years, the meat fell off the bone, and like. So, all right. Do you have any more questions before I go back to the Starboard?
No, I think
because I like your questioning, and it's helping me clarify like where I want to go.
Okay.
So all that being said, like so, I said this book, so I had been involved with all of these different ingredients at the end of book 2. Which was like 2012, 2013, 2014. But it wasn't until I actually made by hand the Starboard.
The
like,
craft.
The reason I knew how to make the Starboard is because I had like 4 years of like doing all the other work.
Yeah.
That then I became a participant, at least on that level, with the stars.
Right.
And then it was through the Susquehanna mystery that I'm like, whoa, the 40th parallel in the Susquehanna River, and that's where I'm living. That's what's on this map.
The
like,
craft came alive.
It came alive. Okay. So
which is an interesting intersection to hexcraft, because you were in Marietta, which is like central locale for Pennsylvania Dutch history of witches.
Completely. I mean, like
that's where you were already in the craft, and then the craft came alive in your geomantic kind of moving about.
If you really want to go a step further with that, it was the presentation in front of the Freemasons, which kicked things off, and Freemasonry, they refer to it as the craft. If you're a Freemason, you refer to your Freemasonic practice as the craft.
Okay. It was the presentation with them that kicked off.
The next day I moved out of Millersville.
Oh no, it didn't kick off. It
kicked me out?
Yeah, it kicked you out, right? Because that was until this past fall, after you did the presentation with the Masons, it was like you hit the rockiest part of the river in your life.
Yeah.
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 And so it's like the craft came alive when you moved to Marietta, right?
Correct.
Like the stars, you created the board, you were somewhat on some level guided to Marietta, living by the Susquehanna River, that mystery came alive to you. You received it, researched it, you wrote a book, did the rite of passage walks, right? You did all of the lectures, live presentations, podcasts, and then the Masons.
And then the Masons.
The craft met the craft.
Then the craft met the craft. And so let's go back to your poem, like the river is current. I was in the river, I was in the current. And it was like meandering slowly and smoothly, and then at that moment is when when the drop happened. I went over the waterfall and like the rapids or what have you. So I'm still in the friggin' rapids.
No, you're not.
So let's go back to the beginning of this video, because this video is about
What is this video about?
we're talking about maybe the end of book 2 and the beginning of book 3. And so I started talking about there are 3 different starboards, and I started doing the starboard. I knew the starboard was special, like when I made it. Like, I know my stuff's good. And like I know that there's nothing else that there's like that. And I knew it was good, and people wanted it. They're like, oh, where can I buy one? I was like, go make yourself one. And that has always been my
encouragement.
My encouragement is like, go and make it, like and whatever it may be.
Because you knew.
Because I knew from experience that something happens when you make it.
The craft comes alive.
Is, the craft comes alive. So that had always been what I said about the Starboard. And I know of about 3 or 4 people who actually went and made a Starboard. And they would ask me like questions. There's all sorts of like, there's... So anyway, this past summer, already, like, I gave the Freemasons, I did the Baltimore, 108 days in Baltimore, and I found myself in Nome Countryside. I was in Nome Countryside. I was like, and I was kind of like in a bind, not a bind, but like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm kind of living in Nome Countryside. Don't really have a permanent address, kind of have a permanent address. Definitely not, I didn't have the capability of how I was prior to that. Bringing in income was mostly through like one-on-one sessions. And I couldn't do that in Nome Countryside for a variety of reasons. And the idea to make a replica of the first Starboard just popped in my head. I was like, well, this can be replicated through like plywood and through wood laser engraving, and that's what
it's behind you.
That's what this is.
Right.
And I made it. This one is actually, let's see, it's the very first one.
It's the number 1?
Yeah,
that's the first. That's the first replica?
That's the first one of these.
That's the first product.
It's the first one that was for sale. So,
make a product, sell a product.
Make a product, sell a product. Exactly. So I made this, and I'm like it's a no-brainer. I knew that people had been interested in it. I know that astrology is a hot thing. I knew like this is a great no matter how you look at it, this is a teaching tool. This is like a great way to give readings. All these different things. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a ship I'm going to sail upon. Right, it's a Starboard. You could probably even put that down if you want on the floor.
I think I'm just.
Are you going to do it right there? And so I developed this relationship with some dude who was making them for me, and
a business relationship.
And I just thought that these things would sell, and they didn't. I think I sold like maybe 8, maybe 10 of these. And then
Not enough to keep your business partner interested.
Definitely not enough to keep the business partner interested.
Because he was in it for make a product, sell a product.
Make a product, sell a product. Busyness.
Yeah.
And there's an element of that which was true for me. Like, I still like to eat, right? But I had found myself in a difficult internal place, which is when you are dependent upon the very thing which you're trying to bring down, maybe?
When you're using a model that you're trying to collapse.
When you're using a model that you're trying to collapse. And so the Starboard, so where am I going with all this? So two places, and I'm gonna pause on it, and I'd like you to ask some questions, maybe.
Okay.
So the Starboard, being able to make to create the Starboard and have it for other people to purchase and have their own, was the springboard to really begin talking about natural astrology, because it is through natural astrology, the practice of it, that the collapse, like one of the techniques for collapsing false timelines can occur. Like you begin to understand, you begin to practice the movement of time outside of, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you know it with your rational mind. You can see it with your eyes, and you're not just being Pied Pipered along. And so the Starboard gave me the opportunity to do that. But then at the same time, I found myself in this kind of like awkward situation of needing to sell these things, or feeling like I needed to sell them. Maybe that's a better way of saying it.
Why was it awkward?
Because I am caught in the same
Model
that I'm trying to collapse. And so...
Are you trying to collapse the business model? Like the basic foundational busyness model? So
probably more general. Mm-hmm. Like more general, like cultural, and cultures, like business runs as culture. But what you are pointing out is maybe where I was struggling, was the idea, the difference between like busyness, like the busyness model. Like the idea that, like, make a product, buy a product, like,
make a product, sell a product.
Make a product, sell a product. And that being, as long as, that's what drives culture, is like, what you are a widget, you are a human widget in a large machine, which is moving a product, and what that product is culture itself. And then having that, or become muddied in my internal world with just like the whole idea of there's value here and exchange.
And what's important to you is actually not make a product, sell a product. What's important to you is that people just make these even on their own, that they engage in the shifting of consciousness that occurs when you make one of these, when you practice with one of these, and in general, when you put your mind in the framework that underpins the artistry of what's next to you.
Yes.
It took an artist's hand and an artist's mind to make that and to replicate it, but it also takes like a sojourner's mind to be able to integrate the perspectives that show up from the art of the Starboard sky map.
Yeah, I mean, so where do I find myself right now at the end of book 2? Is the end of book 2 or book 3? I forget which one. I don't even remember how many books. I got to start labeling the books. Like, this is, at least for now, at least for now, like there's no one making these. I think I've got like 2 left for sale. You are making this one here as we speak. I guess we are, because I'm going to do some embroidery on this. But you are absolutely right. Like I love, like I want people to make them themselves. Like, you know, and I would love to be able to encourage that. But that being said, this Starboard is like this board, this model versus like the handmade one, which is off camera right now. This thing is, there's something really, really special about this as a tool. And we have one, which is going to be ours. So there are going to be 2 more which are for sale. You know, eventually, like I'm not going to we don't need 3.
And so, well, it's not that we're deciding to just not make them anymore, but we're not prioritizing the production of Starboards, partly because you're stepping out of the busyness model and having a business partner and having to forecast and predict production so that some partner can have expectations around business flow.
Right. I mean, realistically, what I would like to do, and this is kind of how it was being set up, is I'm not even in the loop. Like, if someone were to go and buy one, they would just get in touch with that person through whatever their means would, and they go and buy and sell, and like, I'm not even part of that.
But what you actually want to be is a very intimate part of the creation of these.
Well, the creation of it, yes, but like the busyness model of it. And I think that, you know, who knows, that if a person with the right capability is interested, like, you know, like, hey, like I need someone to make these, so if people are interested in acquiring one, I can point them in the right direction. But what I think I'm most, you know, going through this experience, what I'm most like what I personally have come out with is we've got one of these boards. And the reason why that's important is because the other board, the beautiful board, the handmade board, is really big and it's heavy. And
grounded.
Yes, it has a lot of quality and weight and value to it, but as it relates to moving around and doing Starboard, river, and star ceremonies, that doesn't translate.
Yeah, you just can't be lugging this thing around.
And it doesn't, it's not as obvious of a teaching tool like with the East and the West and all of that.
Right.
And so now there's like a portable, after all of this, there's a portable Starboard to move with.
Now you have a teaching tool, and now you have a ceremony centerpiece.
And now we have...
You have one at home.
We have one at home.
That stays grounded at base camp, where the roots go deep. And now you have one that's more like a flying saucer.
One that's more like a flying saucer.
And then this one that you can actually fold up and put in your backpack for when you can't take luggage on the plane. And you have to just put everything in a little school bag. So
that was the whole, everything we were just talking about is a build up then for like what's next, you know, book 3.
I'm not a businessman.
Well, there's all sorts of things. So it's like, yes, like the busyness model is done, but then this space in Bechtelsville is done. I think you said it correctly a moment ago. You corrected yourself from home base to home camp.
Base camp.
Base camp. Because at least for the short-term future, what are we going to be doing? Where's base camp going to be?
We're setting up camp on the river.
Like literally, like that's
on the Susquehanna River.
Yeah, we've got how many bell tents?
I wonder if you can inlay the video of me setting up the small bell tent in the yard
Okay.
so that people can see exactly what this entails.
Okay.
We have a small, medium, large bell tent to act as our 3-room tent house.
It's our tent house. How
On
big
the river.
How big is the big one? It's 16 feet in diameter?
16 feet, 14 feet, and maybe 8 feet.
Like they look like, they kind of are like, at least in form, they look like little yurts, right? Like portable.
Right.
Like that's probably the inspiration. And you could stand, particularly the big ones, you can stand up in, and that will be our base camp, as there is this movement towards a more current, fluid, flowing lifestyle. And
To be river folk.
to be river folk, to move about. And what are we going to be doing? We're going to be doing river and sky ceremony,
Star.
river and star ceremony,
Bringing the stars.
bringing the stars, teaching natural astrology, and embodying a certain energy.
Carrying water as a way of life. That's partly why these books are in this pile here. Be careful, there's tourmaline on the top of the...
I see that.
So Carrying Water as a Way of Life is a book I picked up because I was carrying water as a way of life for 2 years, living full-time on a kind of off-grid tiny house, schooly, renovated school bus. I picked it up recently because of the Susquehanna River, and I thought of carrying... Like, what if you didn't carry water as a way of life for survival? What if you carried water as a way of life for, like carrying like Susquehanna River water around, and the energy that it holds, and like we've been talking about and doing, like taking stones from this place to this place and shifting earth and shifting water as we travel, as we take the stars and the stars guide us. We're also taking the river and the stones are like guiding people into their own, like deeper into their own immersion of self and their journey and the deconstruction and the collapsing and the finding their way, finding like what it is that they want to keep in tow, what they want to carry as a way of life.
And so it doesn't really, like, what you're describing doesn't sound like a good business model, does it?
No, because we're not business people.
Right, because the business model makes sense where? In culture,
In the
paradigm.
business world?
Yeah, like that, like business drives the world, or drives the culture. And so what you describe sounds a whole lot more like a what?
You just like want me to say all the words. It's like fill in the blank from the person behind the camera. Is this a test?
It's a mission. And so during this conclusion of book 2, for me, and this experience with the Starboard busyness plan, there was a shift within me of how I was looking at what it is which we do. And I've always been clear about being in the world, being in the paradigm, but not of the paradigm. But I never thought about myself as like living on a mission. And then in light of the Starboard stuff, that started making more sense. And like, what is someone who lives on a mission, who devotes their life to a mission, to something greater than themselves? You know, that is what, that's a missionary. That's a missionary.
And a missionary is not stationary.
A missionary is not stationary. A missionary has all sorts of different implications to it. I'm going to go down a couple of those right now. One of them is, like, there is a faith, a trust in life or God or whatever word you want to use, which is beyond like human form, of being taken care of. That it will work out. There is that element. And I also want to bring up, like, what's probably the best known example of what people think of as proselytizing missionaries currently are those of the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Because they go door to door?
Because they go door to door all over, yes.
Like the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yes, but the Mormons even more so. They're no, and the reason why I'm bringing up the Mormons is because the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormonism, it began
Dun dun dun!
on the banks of the Susquehanna River.
Which is where we're moving to.
Well, which is where all this began too.
Which was not planned. It's not like we were like, Joseph Smith, we're following in your footsteps.
Or there's a model of something that happens of like going to there's a trail that's already been laid in, at least as an idea in consciousness and
Archetype.
An archetype, thank you. And so as we move to base camp in June, we'll shortly begin a trip out
Extreme west.
And as we go along, like what we did in Florida, we will bring the river and the stars.
We'll bring the stars to the ground, and we'll bring the river to hands.
To hands. And like in practical terms, it's like doing the river and stars ceremony, doing the natural astrology, doing the river ceremony, introducing the ideas of the Susquehanna mystery on ground, not online, but on ground, embodying a mission, embodying an energy, holding a space, teaching about false time, real time, collapsing timelines, all for the purpose of altering and disrupting the trajectory of the current planetary paradigm.
Which leads us down another little rabbit trail. Do you want to...
Which is?
Since we're collapsing so many false identities about being a businessman, wasn't there another identity that you collapsed recently and realized that you're actually quite the... Now you get to fill in the blank. I got trouble right here in River City. It starts with a T. Is that how the song goes?
Possibly. Is that
Music Man?
Music Man?
Oh, I think so. Look at him. Doesn't he look like trouble? Did you know this man didn't know he's trouble?
So one of the things which has been a pill for me to swallow recently is the realization that I'm trouble. Because I'd never thought of myself as trouble before.
But you kept running into trouble.
Everywhere I friggin' go. I never really understood it. Until I realized that that is my nature. Or at least part of it.
And you don't want to be in trouble because trouble means like you're troubling someone.
Correct. But then when I realized that my trouble is just to be focused upon the paradigm itself and not the people I care about. You know, that's why you write a book 3. When you have realizations like that. So yes, so there's the
embrace of trouble.
The embrace of a troublesome side. I've never seen The Music Man. Like, I know what it is. Like, in terms of like a musical and a cultural touch point. And I didn't know it was called River City, so that's really funny.
I know. As I said it, I was like, oh.
But my favorite, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen The Simpsons. But there's once upon a time I used to like to watch The Simpsons. And there's a Simpsons episode where it's like a play on the Music Man. And someone came to Springfield, that's the town of The Simpsons. So I don't think people know that you did not grow up with any cultural reference points.
Yep.
So
I know what The Simpsons are, though.
So it was Springfield is the town, and someone was trying to build a monorail. They're trying to get them to build a monorail in Springfield, in the town of The Simpsons. And there's a line in it. Homer Simpson, the main character, he gets to be the conductor of the monorail, and he gives a tour, and he opens up the door of the engine room of the main driving section of the monorail, and there's a possum hanging, and he's got baby possums like all on the, I guess, on the possum's belly. And then Homer says, "I call the big one Bitey." And for whatever reason, that stuck with me. It stuck with me immensely. Mainly because I once had a possum in my bed when I was living in Richmond. Didn't bite me, but like that. And just like the ridiculous nature of like, I call the big one Bitey. Like, it's so funny. It was, I mean, The Simpsons works because it's funny. And The Simpsons also, I don't know if you're aware of this, of The Simpsons as being a predictor for the future. So yeah, that's the thing. And I reference monorails a lot. I don't know if you know that, but it's only because of that episode. So the whole reason I'm bringing all this up is that you just sang the song about there's trouble in
right here in River City.
Yeah.
It starts with a T, and I forget the rest of the words.
So yeah, so book 3 is called Here Comes Trouble.
Here comes trouble. The life of a river and stars missionary.
And so that's where it's going. For those of you who followed my work for, as long as I've been putting it out, you have seen an arc. You've seen it start on one trajectory and begin to change. It started just as the Susquehanna mystery and then began changing more and more towards conspiratorial ghost stories. And then it became the Freemasons. And then this past year has been following what this bumpy period has been, but where it's leading is the show's going on the road. So there's that. The busyness model's going away. The website, there's no longer going to be a way for people to buy services. For two reasons. Like, one, I'm like, well, there's no more busyness model. And then second, so you'd think like, well, then why would you have a website to go and sell things? And then secondly is my website was just coming up for renewal, and it was $200. And I don't have $200 for a website, so it made a lot of sense for that to come to an end. So as missionaries, like, this is a donation-based model. Like, we are committing ourselves to the support of people being able to recognize the value in which we bring. And the first thing which you and I have done is we just created an online course called Shifting Out of False Time. And this is 5 hours of video, I think 3 different PDF slide presentations, both talking about concepts and then very practical steps for how to work with the Starboard, whether it's one of these or you build your own, why it matters, natural astrology, lunar planning engagement books, all of that sort of stuff. And so that's the first thing which is going to be available in this new sort of missionary model.
And it's a sliding scale exchange.
Sliding scale exchange.
Just to honor the immense amount of time and effort that we put into the production and post-production of it, and to also honor the exchange that you'll be having with the material as we're inviting you into a very deep dive of the the stars. This is just a course on the stars. There's no Susquehanna mystery or river magic in it, but it's a very deep dive into, and we should say actually the heavenly bodies and the sky.
Right.
And mapping the sky and moon, lunar planning, and living life by the moon as an alternative to living life by the clock or the calendar.
Right.
Oh, that clock.
So that is available. I mean, that's only available. You got to old-fashioned way. You send me in. If someone makes a donation, and then I send them a link to go download all the stuff. It's on Dropbox, and so it's also part of this Neo-Luddite philosophy, which I talk about, which is purposefully leaning away from all of the automation. It's still tech-based, but as long as we're still in the world, we can not be of it by resisting the urge to be as
Tech savvy.
Technocrats. As can be. So we've got that going on, and then as our itinerary begins to firm up for this trip, we're going to put that out, and I hope to have many places where we'll be able to go and hold the on-ground ceremonies. So do you have any final thoughts before we...
I just think it's interesting that as I was packing today, I found that green thing up on the mirror, that quote, that you ended book 3 or book 2. You ended your book, it ended with your sinking your roots deep. For people who follow your work really closely, like you're in Bechtelsville, you're 15 minutes from the furthest back ancestry that you have for the Americas, right? Do you want to say that any other way?
Well, there was coming here in the most literal sense was a physical connection with the depth of my roots. I look at that as being more metaphorical. That quote which you have, and I don't know where you found that was sent to me by the people who started Zentangle.
Oh.
Maria, she sent it.
Nice.
She was a calligrapher person, a calligrapherist.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's all of her.
When deep are roots, there is no need to fear the wind.
All right.
I just saw that and I was like, whoa.
What's the name of the book which I always talk about and no one has ever heard of except for me? I'm like, hey, have you read this book?
The Name of the Wind.
The Name of the Wind. And so there are 2 books written in The Name of the Wind, and they've been waiting for the 3rd book to be written for over 10 years, and all of the fans are just fed up with the author because he got everyone hooked in this book and then never gave the 3rd book. So that metaphor is in play. Because I certainly resonate with the main character in that book series, Kavoth. And now we're stepping into the 3rd book, which has never been written. Any final words?
Maybe.
Maybe?
When we first moved in here, we spent a lot of time honoring, recognizing, reading about your 8 times past grandfather and the ship that he came over on, the currents and the great big ocean and the terror and the trauma of coming to the new world on, what was the ship called?
The Patience.
The Patience. And what it must have been like for someone to come here, pitch a tent and then build something like this 1790 home that we've been living in.
Okay.
And what it must have been like to have been like tortured at sea. I mean, I don't want to give all the explicit examples, but I'm sure anyone can just go look that up if they want to.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say you were tortured and terrorized and traumatized, but after you gave the presentation to the Masons about a year and a couple months ago, you didn't give any more presentations.
No.
Presentations ceased. Your life was altered for like the next
You only gave one presentation.
14, 16 months. You gave one presentation after that, and that was the presentation where you met me.
That was the presentation where we met.
And then a couple months later, we landed here.
And then a couple months
Together.
later, we landed here.
And so, just your ancestry having landed here after a tough ride on a boat, and like you landed here after a tough ride of 13 months, kind of being tossed at sea in life, and being able to be tossed at sea with some faith, trust, confidence, and recognition that like you already had the river and the stars in your belt and all these magical tools. And one could say that was your invitation of collapse by merging with the mystery of the Susquehanna and by living life so intentionally daily by the ritual of the Starboard ceremony and the lunar planner. You kind of, it's like, and the craft, right? Whatever the craft is that butts up against the craft of the Freemasons. You invited that rocky boat ride, and it was.
I thought I was just getting in like a really smooth summer, like rowboat ride on a lake. Like it was a big surprise to me what I was. That's my. That was my blindness to my own trouble. I had no idea what I was stepping into. In fact, I even invoked it.
Yeah.
I invoked it with what I said to the Freemasons.
Yes.
Yeah, and and where my family line went after living here they lived in Amityville, Pennsylvania. They
Amityville
moved.
Horror? Oh.
Yeah, that's Amityville, New York, but it certainly has the same phonetic. They moved to basically where the river house is.
Oh, wow.
They moved to Bel Air, Maryland.
Okay.
Which is maybe 50 minutes away, but it's in that part of the world on that side of the river. So there's certainly a whole bunch of currents which have been established, which are being stepped into, but this is a completely different story or a different setting.
And this home has been a haven for our roots to go deep.
This time here has definitely been a haven. This time has definitely been a haven.
It's allowed us to, and what we really did request from the folks who own the land was that we were looking for a place to, I think we had talked about like, I used the words like artists in residency. Like we're both artists of different crafts. And we're just looking to ground and flesh out like the new chapter, but now we're talking about a whole new book.
Right.
And really that's been accomplished, if you will. I don't like the word accomplished, but that intention has come to fruition through the collapse of the busyness model, through the opening of doors to be living on the river again, in a totally different set and setting that's going to be like intense, it's grounded, nomadic. You've been talking about nomad for quite a long time. So really putting feet to the ground on, it's not just talk anymore. like the culmination of 10 years of your work is like now finally like manifesting through your life, where you've been saying something like, what did people like people who are like, what the hell are you doing, Michael? Like, what, get your life together. You're like, didn't anyone see this coming? Like, I saw this coming.
I certainly saw it smoother.
You saw it smoother. Well,
If I recall, what I thought about when we framed up us living here. I remember because it was a short-term lease. Like I remember thinking, like, I just need a place to catch my breath.
yeah.
And our breath has been, or at least my breath has been caught.
And with breath we create.
With breath we create. And you know, we're getting ready to start the next version. So
With our even more mobile, foldable star map, Starboard, that can be rolled right up. Do you want to say anything about Lunarly messages, where you'd like to have live discussion, live Q&A?
So, yes, one of the things which we've been talking about, and technology has been one of the learning points here, is we've been trying to do Starboard ceremonies online, like through Zoom calls or what have you, to various degrees of success. And as we become mobile, as we become tent livers, those who live
Dwellers?
in tents. Dwellers. Tent dwellers. And we figure out that the technology aspect, I want to begin to have regular sessions or communal sessions, talking about these different sort of topics.
Whatever is coming up for people, guided by
The Starboard natural astrology, but then also returning to the Susquehanna. I was on a show recently where I was asked a lot of questions about it, and I realized that there's still a lot of hunger and thirst for that, just that story, the mystery. And so going forward, having, I don't know if it's going to be weekly sessions, monthly sessions, probably once a lunation where we will have
communal sessions,
deep dives, which would be only accessible. It'll be on Zoom most likely, and we'll send a link.
And we're just asking again for some type of honorary symbolic exchange for those communal sessions.
And this is what we will be using to go and fund our journey as we go
Our
west.
access to the internet and all the technologies that it required.
Yeah.
That it required to communally, globally get together for people who are across different states and countries. There was one more thing hanging on in my mind. Maybe we can turn off the camera, and if I think of it, we can turn it back on.
We could do that.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the river and the stars show up in book 3 in your life as you're more equipped. I was not equipped to be on camera tonight at all. As you are more equipped, and you and I are equipped together to be taking the river and the stars further into collapsing false identities, blind spots, sovereignty, empowerment, initiation, magic, ancestry, all the things that have come up in the last few months that have just been popping off the tree like fruit. Oh, don't show the whole mess of the house.
We're in the middle of a move. It's okay to be messy. All right. All right, my friends. This was. I wasn't certain where this video was going to go today, but there was a lot which I wanted to share, and I feel like it all occurred. So I appreciate your patience. I hope you got something out of it, and I look forward to sharing mine and Christy's next steps together with you. Do you remember what you had to say?
I remember.
Okay, tell the good folks.
So for people who follow pretty closely, there was a Starboard ceremony we did in the fall where for the first time in a long time you brought out the river ceremony felting map that you made, which again was a huge craft, like a huge handcraft, art craft.
Yes.
And it was also the first time that a Fellowship of the Boards online meeting, like, it didn't record and we lost Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And like we didn't even know any of that, and we had live on ground people as well.
That was the best one we did.
That was the best one, and I know, and there's a woman out there, and I don't remember her name at the moment. I can just picture the words, who is still, I think, dying to know, to have like a repeat of that one, because she had just bought a Susquehanna Mystery River book.
Okay.
So, but the point of that is like, there's been all of these fruits popping off the tree in the last couple of months in regards to the art of what you do and what I do, and for every time like some of the juiciest fruit like appeared on the tree, the technology would not work.
Mm-hmm.
Like it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like the magic itself was like giving a big like middle finger to the technology and being like, I will not be witnessed by anything but like the real flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like
there's gonna be a lot of blood.
On ground, in person, there's gonna be a lot of blood. No,
there's
not. We're not ready to tell that story yet.
All right.
There's just a little bit of blood.
All right.
So anyways, that's what I wanted to say about the at some point in your narration of the last 10 years and the last year and the last few months, how they've all built up to the ending of this book. Mm-hmm. And the River and Star ceremony comes from that moment where we had someone from Costa Rica, Australia, Maryland. Like it was the fullest Fellowship of the Boards on ground and online. And we brought out the Susquehanna River. Mm. And as soon as we introduced the river, I looked back at like the time date stamp of when like Bree and Austin texted you and was like, hey, where'd you go? And looked back at when the recording stopped, and it was just before you started talking about river and river magic. So is the takeaway from the story is like the only way you can actually hear this and witness the River and Star ceremony is on ground. Maybe. It was the first time that happened, and then a couple times after we had technology issues as well.
There's technology issues all the time.
All the time?
All the time.
Okay.
Except for these.
Except for these?
The thing which we're doing right now.
It seemed outstanding. It seemed outstanding even to you at the time that both Wi-Fi and recording dropped. Mm-hmm. Recording so that even though we didn't have the Wi-Fi Zoom live thing, we thought we were still recording it, but that even had stopped. Yeah. So like things just froze and it appeared. So there was this appearance of it's still going on, mm-hmm. but it wasn't. But what was going on ground in person was like it got very rich. And so I guess maybe at some point will be able to capture the river and the stars connection, the way it was birthing itself in that moment. But I also feel like it was a birth, and like
I would say also, but like right here, this is the carrying of water, right?
this is the hidden messages.
No, I meant the actual water. Like I have the camera on this. That's
yes.
the actual water.
Yeah.
And so from the Susquehanna, we collected that last week. And that is to be brought in the in-person ceremonies.
Yeah.
And there'll be some degree of anointment, right?
Sure.
Like, probably the ceremony is not going to be on the Susquehanna River. We're going to be far away from it, and someone's going to be able to have an experience with it. And that will be this, what we're seeing right here is the medium, right? Mm-hmm. And that will never be replicated online.
Oh, yeah, that ceremony will never be replicated
And so
online.
to me, that's what it's really about.
But what we could replicate is some of the foundations.
Yes.
Of how, like, this has been a slow birthing process of bringing the river and stars together this way.
Yeah.
Right? And, I mean, for you, it's been 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
For me, it's just been, like, in the last 8 months, I've just been like, I always thought it was like, I thought it was the river and stars from the beginning. And so I just wanted to share that there's been a lot happening. And for those people who were on that time, I just, like, I don't even know if they know that they were, for like 10 minutes, they were part of this really special moment where something, like, some of the first fruits of book 4 or 3.
We're already now in book 4, which I like.
I thought you said book 4 at the beginning.
It's confusing.
But I think it's
know,
book
right?
3.
I think I'm going to go with book 3 because of the name of the wind.
I think it's So more to come. But if you're watching this and you're very interested in the river and stars ceremony, the ceremony cannot be done online. And we would love to come and do a house party ceremony, a house ceremony.
Yeah.
Or wherever it is that you host a group, to bring the Susquehanna mystery and the Starboard. Bring the planets and the heavenly bodies to the ground.
There we go.
And bring the river to your hands. Okay, thank you.